What's up, everybody? So, today I'm going to be talking about why, if you want to compete in your market for a really long time, you can't help it, but you need to really care about your clients, right? You need to really care about the avatar you're helping as a coach. So, today I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and why that's so important, and why most people forget that if you want to dominate a market for a really long time, you need to think about it in terms of 10 years or 20 years, right? You can't just think about it in 2 years, make your money quick and get out. Even if you don't want to sell the same thing, right, but sell to the same person, you still need to understand the person you're selling to, their problems and pains, and how to find solutions for them. And for that, you still need to care. So let's get straight into it. And my name is Guido, by the way. I help coaches scale to 50K per month and beyond with sales teams and AI. So if you want to get to that place, feel free to subscribe and leave a like if you can. Just trying to help as many people as possible. So yeah, let's get straight into it. I'm going to share my screen here and talk about a few concepts. So the first thing is ask yourself, like, do you really care about your clients? Because again, like, there's different personalities for people, but if you don't really care about your clients, you're not going to have the passion to solve all their problems as best as you can, right? Because if it's going to be about what you can do for them, or what it takes for you to just make enough to make 50K per month, that might work for a month, 2 months, even 6 months, even honestly up to a year. But long term, somebody else is going to take your cake. Okay. And so if you don't really care about solving your ideal avatar's problems, right, you might need to work on that, right? If you're just doing it for the money, you won't really dig deep to find true solutions, right? So, for example, I was up 2 days ago until 2 a.m. just thinking, how could I make my product better and how could I integrate AI into the mix, right? Why? Well, because nobody's really doing that right now. Like, there are people that are really good at AI, for example, to create content, right? But even that, they're not really actually amazing solutions from what I've seen. I've bought their programs, and they're not really applying that to the whole process of a coaching business, for example. Nobody's really doing that. They're all kind of doing the same value funnel and focusing on, like, just, yeah, doing the same thing, getting followers and talking to people and all that. There's nothing wrong with that, but I want to stand out in a way that is different, and not just because that's, but because I know my solutions will be better compared to what they're offering, right? And which means it will solve their problems better. But the only reason why I'm actually doing this is because I care about solving their problems, not only for them, but also because I'm passionate about solving those specific problems for those specific type of people, right? So when you don't care and you just care about the money, you'll half-ass most things. You'll do just enough to collect the paycheck, and then you won't give it your all, right? So you need to find your passion to solve those problems, and your business will scale a lot easier. Perhaps not in the short term, right? Because product doesn't always reflect right away into growth. But in the long term, it will just be smooth sailing because word of mouth and just even your marketing, because you can tell about your product in your marketing, it will just make things a lot easier for you. Okay. So um, that's one component of it, right? Focus on product, focus on getting passionate about your clients' results and about your clients' problems more specifically. So what an exercise that really worked for me was, okay, if I had to make my delivery 10 times better, what would I do, right? Even if it doesn't matter how long it would take me, or doesn't matter if it's possible or not to make the changes that I want in that list, right? But I just made a long list of things that I could automate, delegate, improve for my clients to make it as easy as possible for them, right? So that they could get as many results as possible, as quickly as possible, right? Time to value. So because one of the other things that I'm thinking about is the time to value. Sorry, yes, time to value, but mostly like speed to reply. But if you notice, the trend is about speed to value, right? Which is how fast do people that invest in talking to you, right, can get value back. And that could be in just a conversation, or it could be investing in you and your program and getting getting some value back, right? Getting money, let's say, or health. If it's in health, getting, losing weight, building muscle, losing, stopping the pain levels, right, that they might have, or starting to feel more mobile, whatever it is, or more athletic, right? So because at the end of the day, everybody's competing for the same people's attentions, right? There's abundance. There's a lot of people in the market. But if you notice, like, even a couple of friends of mine that are in the same space, their inbox is kind of filled in with the same people that are filled in my inbox, right? And so the attention will go to more or less the same people. So the difference is, how do you impress those people, right? How do you get them to pay attention to you? And so one of the best ways to do that is speed to reply. The faster you can get back to them in the DMs, and in posting frequently, right? In making your product so good that they get the value much quicker, right? Even from your free stuff. And ultimately, when they're clients, how fast do you get back to them when you have the one-on-one chat support, right? All of these things are a very good way to stand out compared to your competition. And so how the worst case scenario would be that it would take you like a week to get back to your clients, right? That's probably nobody, or somebody that's really bad at delivery, or somebody who's on vacation, whatever. The best case scenario would be instant, right? As soon as somebody types something, maybe even before they submit the message, they would already have an answer, right? That's the ideal. It's an instant solution. And I guess we could go even a step further, which is they could already have the answer before they ask the question. So they don't even need to ask the question. See how far you can go with this. So because of that, but let's say we go to the example of like they actually want to ask a question. So what if you had like some kind of either a person assistant that would reply questions right away as soon as they were sent? And that would be their whole job, right? That's one thing. Or the other thing is having an AI implementation that is trained to answer questions as long as they know how to, right? As soon as the person asks the question. So basically immediately. That's something that I'm working on, for example, right? Because that could be a game changer. And it could either be overt or covert, meaning the client could know that it's an AI answering right away, or it could be covert, right? So the client doesn't know that it's actually the same person, but obviously the AI needs to be trained more so that it actually sounds like a real person. So that's the thing. And that's just one of the applications, right? But ultimately, how fast you get back to people is ultimately also how fast they get to the next feedback loop, right? Because what happens is somebody has a problem and they ask you a question, and then from there you give them the solution, they implement it and it gets a certain outcome, and then that brings up another question, right? And that loop takes X amount of time, right? But the funny thing is that it could take 10 days, or that could take 1 day, or 1 second, right? Like it really all depends on how fast the person moves through each stage, or how long each stage does take, right? So because of that, if you can just have 10 loops inside of a typical one loop that most coaches have, you're going to be able to compete against them, right? And so that's what we want to do, is introduce more feedback loops within the same time period that most people would have. And that's what really leads to time to value. Another thing that leads to time to value, right, meaning how long it takes for somebody to get value from your program or from a conversation, is also the perception of the value itself, right? So you might not be able to, let's say you help people get to 100,000 per month, right? You might not be able to get somebody to 100,000 per month in 3 days, right? But maybe in 3 days or in 2 weeks, you could have your first week that where you hit half KPIs to get to 100K per month, right? Or you could hit all the metrics that you need in order that you hypothesize that you needed to get to 100K per month, right? Like the things that you can actually control. And so like number of calls taken, number of calls booked, and all those things, right? And so because those things are under your control, it's easier to get to things that you can control KPI first before the things you cannot control, right? Like sales and actual calls booked and all that. And so because of that, like you can actually just change how the value chain works so that when people get to certain milestones, it does actually feel like a win. And now here's the trick. Instead of just having two main goals, right, which is that first initial goal, it's like great, and then the last one of like 100K per month, but then like a vacuum of space in the middle. What you want to do is have a measured approach to success, even if it's arbitrary and you just create it from nothing, right? You want to have that because that's going to give people hope all throughout, right? So let's say you have to eat a giant cake, right? If you just look at the whole cake and like, I have to eat this cake in 3 hours, that's a lot, right? But if you just remove the cake entirely, like, it's in another room, right? But let's say you have like a long table, right, across like 5 different rooms, all the way leading up to the main cake, and you then divide the main cake, right, into small little pieces that go into the 100K. It's a lot easier to digest each of those pieces, right? Every day you just show up and you eat a piece and then you move on with your day, and that's it, right? And that's going to give you the dopamine release of the small piece of cake. It's not going to overwhelm you, right, with all the sugar that you have to eat from the big cake. And so it's actually even better because it's like challenging enough that you have to make it happen in one day, right? But it's also not too challenging that makes you overwhelmed and stuffed and not wanting to eat cake anymore, right? It's a weird analogy, but hopefully that makes sense. And so that's really it, right? That's how you kind of control time to value. You want to reframe the way people see value, and also you want to have milestones along the way, right? Milestones is a good way to put it. Levels, you can call it that as well. So you want to have 3 main steps within your program, and then have levels within that each of those steps, right? So step 1 could be learn a skill, implement that skill, and then scale that skill, for example. And then the sub levels could be learn that skill. It could be like learn all the components, right? 10 levels to learn each component of this skill. The implementation could be, okay, there's 3, 4, or 5 levels to implement a skill, right? Like you need to first set up your profiles and do this other thing, right, until you get to 5, which is completes the goal, right? And then the third one is scale as well. To scale, these are the things you need to prep to scale, and then this is how you truly scale, and there you go, right? That's how you divide it into levels. And it's hard to prescribe like a generic kind of way. Eventually I'll get there probably, but it's all about like seeing the client journey of your clients. And if you had to go through it again, like how could you make it as easy as possible and as exciting as possible, right? Like in a way, I watched the movie Willy Wonka recently, with the new version, and it's actually not the best movie for an example. Like the old version of Willy Wonka was better, and the Chocolate Factory. So where he talks, like he walks him through each stage, right? So it's like making that a fun experience, right? Each stage you don't know what's going to happen, but something funny happens and like it's exciting, right? Whatever. So that's something, right? And then finally, I want to finish with this idea, which is like, who cares about you, right? Like nobody cares about you. The reason, and that's okay, right? Like anybody in business, you might have loyalists, right? Fans and people that like you, but nobody's going to, you know, ultimately give you $10,000 to not get anything from you, right? If they give you $10,000 out of nothing, right, it's because you probably provided a ton of value for them in the past, right? So it's still an exchange of value. So because of that, people will only pay attention to you in business when there's something that they can gain from it. So if they're not paying attention, either you're not providing enough value for them to pay attention, or you're not making it the value perceived as value, or enough value for them to want to look at. Like a lot of people create programs or create content and things like, and I'm definitely working on that. Like I'm not claiming to be perfect at this, but they create these pieces of content that, or programs or whatever it is, that are okay, even good, but they're not great, right? They don't spend an extra 10, 20 hours working on that. um, Not claiming that you should do that with every single thing you do, right? But that could be a good challenge actually. But the big things, right? Your program, for example, I would say that's a good thing to spend that amount of hours on top of what you already spent, to really get something that is great, something that stands the test of time, right? Somebody that keeps you in the market for 10 to 20 years. And here's why I like that approach more, because it's not that you can just like make some money and get out of the market and you're good, right? Like inflation is always going up, right? $1 million nowadays is not, it's like 10 million now. Sorry, $1 million like 10 years ago or 5 years ago was like, is like a 10 million now to retire. And so we just need to make a lot more money to retire and achieve whatever we want. So because of that, the cost of time is catching up. And so, and not only catching up, but it will pay, it's a tax that you will have to pay in the future. And so just aiming at 3 to 5 years of good business, even 100K per month, it might just be enough, honestly. Maybe it's enough, but I just think it's a risk, right? So why not make something great as well? Not necessarily to go for amazing impact, right? Not like necessarily like a $100 million company a year, but at least something that you can be proud of, that makes you a lot of money, but also helps a lot of people. And a product that, like, oh, when I went through that product, it was sick, that type of thing. So and you can't take it personally, right? Because people don't really care. It's the same for everybody, and that's fine. That's actually how the market should be, right? You should get attention when you provide value. Unconditional love, it's not something for business, right? So you always, there's two fronts again, right? Like you need to actually provide value, and the other side is you need to show, you need to know how to show, right, that you're providing value. So here's the thing. This might be controversial, but I think most people think they need to show better what they have, but in reality, their stuff is just not that good, and so that's why it's not getting attention. Now, you might have, like, here's the thing: if you're somebody that is like, no, my stuff is really good, right, and I just need to learn how to sell better and how to market better, but I because I spent hours and hours and hours in my product, I know it's amazing. Okay, that is probably going to be somebody who needs to focus on marketing better. Um, However, somebody who is just focused on marketing for the last 5 years, and it's like, I just want to make money, and they're not really focused too much on the client. They have an okay product, but it's like they don't even think about making great products. 100% product. That's it. And I just personally think that's the case. Is it a longer way to 100K and a million a month? Yes, but fine. That's okay. I'd rather sell something amazing that I can sleep at night with, knowing that it's amazing, than something that is all right and gets me to my goal faster, but then I stagnate because then I need to learn how to do product again. And then I have this in the back of my mind that if should I have sold that to that person when I was at that stage? You know what I mean? So ultimately that's how I think, but I could be wrong, of course. So but regardless, right, you need to focus on perception and also the actual content, right? And that's throughout the whole process, right? How you do your marketing, how you do your ads, how you do your content, how you present yourself in sales calls, in DMs, right? And ultimately client delivery, of course. And so do that, and your message that will come across a lot better, right? And so give tons of value and connect to their ultimate desires, because that's ultimately what matters. So hopefully that was helpful. If you want to get to 50K per month with AI and sales teams, feel free to subscribe. And yeah, any questions, let me know. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. But just here to give value. So I hate being pitched like anybody else. So, but if you want to talk about further working together, I'm always on Instagram. We can talk about it. So have an amazing day and talk soon.